Today I will be talking about how not to become overwhelmed with your intrusive negative thoughts using acceptance and commitment therapy, which in short we call ACT. And if you are not familiar with this type of therapy, then I would encourage you to go and watch this video where I talk about some basic terms such as fusion or diffusion that are derived from ACT. And also towards the end of this video, I will be giving you two very simple techniques of diffusion to help you to put an end to your constant struggle of fighting with your intrusive negative thoughts. When I was preparing to create this video, I've done my research, and it seems that on average we experience between 30 to maybe 60,000 intrusive thoughts throughout the day. And when I say intrusive, I mean positive and negative. However, the research also tells us that majority of our intrusive thoughts are actually negative, and this is to do with our survival. So what we can do to actually live a content life while we're experiencing all these intrusive thoughts? I'm sure you all can relate that we all have those moments in our life when, for instance, our inner critic voice becomes really loud and tells us all the anxieties, all the worries, all the worst case scenarios. So it could be something like, you will never achieve anything, you're not good enough, right? Often what happens, we push those thoughts away, we fight with them. But what if I tell you that there's actually a better way of dealing with them? Instead of fighting with them and wasting so much energy on that, we can actually learn how to live alongside of them. Unfortunately, many of us falls into the trap of actually struggling with those thoughts and fighting with them and pushing them away. But just like trying to stop a river from flowing, this is an uphill battle. And yes, it might happen that you might be really good at times with suppressing them, and there might be times when your negative thoughts, they become very silent. But then again, something might happen in your life when you're gonna become emotionally more vulnerable, and this is when those intrusive thoughts, they can become even stronger. And then again, you're gonna have to make all the effort and you're gonna have to spend all the energy on trying to suppress them. Imagine being in woods and trying to swat away every single mosquito. It is quite exhausting, impossible, ineffective, right? And when we think about our intrusive thoughts, they work actually in a very similar way. So trying getting rid of them, trying to suppress them, it is impossible, ineffective, exhausting, and also can leave you frustrated. And this is where the diffusion comes in. This term comes from ACT, and in short we can say that diffusion, it is act of separating ourselves from our intrusive thoughts. Instead of fighting with them and struggling with them, we learn how to accept them, how to observe them but don't judge them, and how to let them simply be. So you could compare this to something as watching clouds moving on a sky. We observe them, we acknowledge they are there, but we don't do anything to stop them. Diffusion also helps us to understand that our thoughts are just thoughts, mental events, words and stories that we say to ourselves. They don't necessarily reflect reality, and they are definitely not the ultimate truth, as sometimes we take them for. Additionally, diffusion, it is not about controlling our thoughts or our emotions, but it is a technique of acceptance. The aim of diffusion, it is not to control our mind to reduce the anxiety, but to accept our intrusive thoughts for what they are and how they are. But we can say as well that with time, the more we practice diffusion, that will then create less resistance. And when we create less resistance, that means we don't feed our anxiety, so the anxiety will drop. So we could say that here the reduction of anxiety, it is a positive byproduct of diffusion. And yes, sometimes when people, they start using diffusion, they will complain that their negative thoughts are not disappearing, so what's happening, right? But this is true, because the aim of diffusion, it is not to diminish our negative thoughts. We learn how to accept them, how to observe them, how to live alongside of them. So we stop fighting against them. We stop wasting our energy on pushing them away. Think of it like this. You live next door to a neighbor with whom you don't really agree. Maybe you have different views. And by trying constantly argue with your neighbor and trying to convince your neighbor to your views, you're wasting a lot of energy. But then at the same time, you're not achieving anything, you're not changing them. This can only leave you feeling frustrated, exhausted, and also can contribute to you losing focus on what is really important for you in your life. Instead, you accept the fact that you live next door to someone who maybe has very different views to yours, that you don't agree with them, and then you accept the fact that you cannot change the other person. And because of that, then you don't have to struggle with constantly fighting with them and arguing with them. You then redirect your energy into something what is really important for you in your life. This does not mean you condone to their views, but it allows you to free yourself from this constant, impossible struggle. Acceptance here doesn't mean you give up on your goals, on your dreams, or you resign to the life you don't want to have, but it is about acknowledging the present moment with its challenges and its joys, and then taking action that is aligned with your values and your wishes and your goals. We need to acknowledge that getting rid of our intrusive thoughts, it is impossible. We always gonna experience some level of those intrusive thoughts, but what we can do, we can turn down the volume on them, and when we try to argue with them, when we try to suppress them, this is when we actually invite them. That's when we open the conversation and we welcome them. With diffusion, the aim is to learn to observe our thoughts without judging them, acknowledging them without getting caught up in the drama. Sometimes when using diffusion, we might have this worry that we're gonna miss something important when we're gonna just acknowledge the thoughts, when we're not gonna read into the meaning of the thought. And one very simple solution to deal with this worry, it is to actually ask yourself a question: is this thought helpful to me? And if your answer is yes, then maybe there is a value in reflecting on that thought. But if your answer is no, that means you can just observe it and let it be. Because I always encourage you to start small, you could initially start learning how to notice your thoughts without attaching any judgment to them. So without having the judgment of negative, positive, good or bad. For instance, if you're experiencing thoughts such as, I'm not prepared enough, I'm gonna mess up, people, they're gonna think I'm incompetent. First of all, notice those thoughts. So acknowledge that you are experiencing intrusive thoughts about not being prepared instead of being caught up in them. So out loud, you can even say to yourself, I'm experiencing thoughts about not being prepared enough. Secondly, observe them. So don't judge them. Don't say whether they are good or bad. Just simply, I'm experiencing thought about not being prepared. Thirdly, accept them as just thoughts, mental events, not facts, not the ultimate truth. As a last step, you can guide yourself to return to present moment, to the task at hand. And to help you achieve that, you can also focus your attention on maybe your physical sensations in your body. So you can choose the part of your body that you would like to focus on. It could be, for instance, your feet. And then you think like how they feel. Are they warm, cold? Do you feel any tingling in them? Or you could focus on your breathing and you could focus on maybe the lung movement. How does it feel, the air? Is it warm? Is it cold? Do you feel anything in your throat every time when you breathe in and out? And this sort of exercise actually helps you to be more present in the current moment. And that gives you that separation between now and those worries that are all about future. By observing your thoughts without judging them, you're learning how to diffuse from them, and that then allows you to deal with them more effectively instead of being fused with them. Another very simple exercise that you can apply when dealing with your intrusive thoughts, it is to imagine your thoughts as leaves falling from the tree in autumn. Each leaf represents a thought. Some leaves are beautiful, some are brown, some are dry, some might be even annoying. So they're falling, they're passing, they're rising, and they're going. Instead of catching every leaf, instead of trying to stop them from falling, we simply observe them. We acknowledge maybe their shape, their color, and then we just let them be and we just let them fall to the ground. Similarly, we can observe our thoughts without judging them. We only notice whether it is a worry, whether it is a plan, or maybe memory. We can also acknowledge what emotion that thought is producing. Maybe it is anxiety, maybe it is sadness, or maybe it is excitement. So similarly, as we watch the leaves to fall to the ground, we can observe our thoughts come and go. We don't need to hold on to those thoughts. We don't let those thoughts to define who we are. We acknowledge them and then gently we return ourselves to present current moment. Using this sort of metaphor of leaves falling to the ground when dealing with intrusive thoughts, it actually creates some distance between us and our thoughts. And when we achieve that, then it's so much easier to refocus our attention on our task at hand. This metaphor illustrates the core concept of diffusion in ACT. It emphasizes observing thoughts without judging them, allowing us to be more present in current moment. And if you would like to learn more about ACT, fusion, and diffusion, I would encourage you to go and watch my other videos from this series. And this will be it for today, and I'm gonna see you in the next one then. Thank you. Bye bye.